The July 29th work session of the Jackson County Library District Board is called to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Do we have present Vicky Brown,
Here.
Susan Kiefer,
Here.
Marta T,
Here.
Marissa Shepherd,
Here.
Kevin Keating?
Not yet. On his way, we hope. Okay, well, I'm going to begin. Welcome the staff that are in the room with us and staff and guests that are joining us virtually. If anybody is having problems hearing, please raise your hand or somehow let us know, and we'll try and do better at speaking loud enough and clearly enough for you. I'm just going to kind of run through a little bit of why we're here today and kind of what we hope to accomplish today. The Library District Board has received a request for reconsideration of a decision made by Library Director Carrie May to remove a Pride banner from display in the Ashland Branch Library. Excuse me. And that is our purpose in being here today, is to discuss that reconsideration. We will not be making any decisions today. Any decision, if one is to result from this, will be made at the board meeting on August 21. So those are kind of the general parameters. I mean, we will be looking at the policies that are under consideration or that we are using in making this reconsideration. And we will be having some conversation, probably have a few background questions for Carrie to kind of get everybody up to speed in terms of some historical perspective on this. So, yeah. Any questions on process or what we're doing?
You're going to read the land acknowledgement.
Oh, okay. Would help if I looked at, oh, shoot, I probably don't, I've got the wrong folder. I don't have one with me. Sorry. Yeah.
Perfectly.
50 pound notebook. I've got everything in it.
I can pull it up for you.
Okay.
Usually have an extra copy. Forgot. Oh,
You've got you. Okay.
is it the one that's on the website? If it's easier for
Maybe.
you to read, I can, this is the larger text. Okay, sure, which is going to be easier for you to read.
That's the
The old one.
right.
There you go. Oh. It's
not
not
the old one.
incorrect, it's just the full text.
Right.
Understand, thank you.
We don't read. Not when we usually read for this. Anyway, sorry for the confusion there and my oversight. Please join me in thought as we read the Jackson County Library Services Land Acknowledgement. Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, as well as the Shasta, Takelma, and Lagawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We take this moment to recognize the Indigenous peoples whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for Indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. Thank you. Sorry to steal your computer. Right? Okay. And I guess, Carrie, if you don't mind, if you could give just a very brief kind of history relative to the banner and your decision and the request coming forward.
Sure, so the Pride banner that was hung at the Ashland Branch Library was hung in 2019 when a local group was protesting in the area. And so the banner had been hung up at that time as a indicator that the library is a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community. And it has hung there ever since. And so over the last 5 years now, that it's come up a couple of times as I've been going through the library and as I've come through with library consultants and people who aren't there all the time have pointed to it and said, hey, is that always hanging there? That could be construed as making a statement. And so, kind of put that on the back burner as, yes, something to think about, something to look into. And then other things came up. We had a pandemic, other things interrupted, looking into that further. And then, as you all know, at the end of April, I believe it was, you received a email from a member of the community asking the same question and making some of the same observations, which just brought this back to my attention and to yours as well, and brought something forward that, as if you haven't visited the Ashland Library frequently, you might not have been aware of either. And so it was that most recent awareness that was the impetus for looking more closely at our policies to determine whether having a banner on permanent display in a library was in line with our policy guidelines. And in looking at both our bulletin board display and exhibit policy, as well as our gift acceptance policy, determined that our display policy, while it doesn't specifically state that the length of time something is on display, it implies that, I guess. And so that's something that looking more closely at that policy and making sure the policy is clear was another takeaway from this. And then looking at the gift acceptance policy and looking at the banner as possibly a donation of artwork, it didn't really meet that criteria either. And so decided to remove the flag at the end of June 2024.
Thank you. So, any questions for Carrie or questions for the rest of us?
Thank you for convening the study session for my request. The amount of feedback that the board received in our board inbox, as well as in person at the last formal board meeting, is in support also of the sentiment expressed in the letter from the Queer Affinity Group of employees of JCLS. And I was not privy to the April 29th email. So I don't know if it was a matter of somebody flagging for the library that, hey, this was intended as temporary, why is it permanent? Or was it a matter of somebody's sensibilities being impacted or values? All of that is very important. I don't know what sort of an email would lead to taking down a banner that the letter from the employees indicated was there as a testament, and yes, as a statement. It absolutely became a statement, and I'm not a lawyer, so this is just my take on it, of a welcoming and inclusive environment, and that banner contributed to the emotional and psychological safety, as we've also since heard verbally and in writing from the employees and patrons and those who came out in support of the statement of it. So I looked at the reconsideration of displays or exhibits, paragraph 6 of the policy, and there it says the decision may be appealed to the board. So Chair, when you talked about the board receiving request for reconsideration regarding the reinstatement, were you referring to the 3-pager from the employees or something else?
Actually, I'm not sure what, I mean, kind of in conversation with Carrie, I'm not sure exactly which. And I know there was a request that went to a state library
Yes,
organization.
so the collective concerns brought forward at the last meeting is that the
Gotcha.
kind of call for a reconsideration.
Asked for immediate rehanging of the banner, so
Yeah,
I think we can take as a request for reconsideration, even though it
Yeah.
wasn't phrased that way.
Gotcha. Out of all of the communications we received, that letter from the employee group was the most thorough one, so that's the one I've been referring to in mentally preparing, just revising my notes for today's meeting. That letter has several steps that the group is suggesting the board to consider. Number one, of course, being the reinstatement of the flag. Being the newest board member, I also did not feel comfortable reaching out to board members behind the scenes because that could constitute ex parte communication. So I have not had a conversation about this with anybody in this room online or at all. And in the past, I guess for context, has the board, in the formal context, voted on any request for reconsideration? And when, like 10 years ago or 5 months ago, how recently?
I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, I'm beginning my 4th year on the board. During my tenure as board member, I have not been a part of a request for reconsideration of a display, or other materials or anything else. As a board member, I have, and I think other board members would have also received concerns from members of the public about displays in the library, and typically those resulted in conversation with library Carrie and library staff. Since the board is not, it is not our responsibility to determine what is in a display in the library. So we never had one of those concerns rise to the level of a request for reconsideration of either removing the display, because we have had requests that were unhappy with displays. But
We have removed at least one that I can think of, so.
and Marta, I guess to answer that question from the other side, so we have a process for displays, programs, and library materials. And in the almost 6 years I have been here, all of the requests have been, the first level of review is, my review and staff review of it, and then making the decision. And then if the individual is not satisfied with that decision, then they appeal it to the board. And prior to this, all of those formal processes have ended when they received the letter with the what the decision was.
Determination, summary. Gotcha. I will share that I was hoping to get more context on if the board were to lean one way or the other, would a motion at the next board meeting be the correct and appropriate way to go? And are there any legal ramifications for the board if they act upon that request for reconsideration? Can we have a discussion about this, or is this something that can only be communicated in email and in writing? I really don't know these things.
I think we're here to have that discussion.
yeah, I mean, I think we definitely can have the discussion today. The board meeting, I mean, really our final conclusion is either supporting or not supporting Carrie's decision. I mean, that's what the request for reconsideration is about, so, but getting to a point of either consensus or semi-consensus today is something that we feel we are ready to move forward with to take to the board meeting.
Mhm.
Is our point in being here today. So I think any questions are fine, and I think, I mean, I think we can all do our best to try and answer questions. Again, I don't think there has been a lot of conversation going on between any board members relative to this topic, so we're kind of all beginning this conversation anew here today, so.
So I'd like to say that I want to thank Carrie May for all of the documentation that has been done, as well as sharing that at some point. That particular banner display veered into gray area for which we do not have policy or context in our documentation. I know that after receiving the feedback from the community and studying up a little bit on the documentation provided, my initial leaning when facing something in a gray area like this would be to err on the side of a banner that represents inclusivity still being up, even though I will concede it can be perceived as making a statement. And that's why hearing the feedback from the employees and community is leading me in the direction of wanting to have a discussion about the consideration and reinstating the banner.
And I can probably, since you were not on the board when the concern from the patron came to me, it was a patron who is also part of, at least as she described, a marginalized group, and it was a concern for that displaying a banner that was a symbol for one group of diverse people, in her sense of it, excluded other people whose symbols were not being displayed. So that was, and I mean, at that point, just to kind of describe my process, because I'm not at an Eagle Point, I'm not a patron of the Ashland branch. I've been in the Ashland branch, but probably have never entered the Ashland branch through the door where the banner was displayed. So I was, other than the patron provided me with photographs, I was not at all familiar myself. So, I sought more background information from the branch manager in Ashland and from Carrie, and responded to the patron with the best information that I had available, not with agreement to take any action, because that certainly was not my place to take any action. So that was kind of the whole process that happened with that. There were some email exchanges back and forth, and that was, so the patron did not pursue it beyond us or I sharing information with her. So.
Gotcha. Thank you for the context. What I'm operating with today is that really clear set of actions, and I have my laptop open because that's the letter, the affinity group, and there are 4 actions in there that would assure the group of the continued support of the LGBTQ+ community, one being immediate reinstatement, either for permanent display or until an adequate replacement can be found and installed with input from the queer community group. And the second point of their, second point requested is a statement from library director to the board and to the staff, reaffirming the district's commitment to inclusion, reminding them of the GLCLA's statement against systemic injustice and the district's precedent that visibility is neutrality. And three being creation and implementation of training documents for staff on how to handle and respond to identity-based complaints. And the fourth being mandatory equity, diversity, and inclusion training for all board members. Oh, and there's a fifth one, apologies, better communication with the queer affinity group prior to any issues that arise going forward. This is where I engage my fellow board members or board directors feeling or initial response to those 5 bullet points being laid out pretty clearly. I'm inclined to focus on the 1 and the 5, 4 being mandatory training for all board members, and I'm their most recent addition. So I haven't entirely gotten a really good handle of what training there is there, so I cannot speak to that. But number 5 being improved prior communication with the group and increased inclusivity in decision making, and they're just based on my organizational trainings and involvements and service in the past. They're, I feel like, negotiating a liaison role with the queer affinity group on the board could work, or vice versa. But I really wanted to focus on how do we lean in terms of supporting or not supporting the immediate reinstatement of the flag. Because that discussion can take place today before any wordsmithing happens for any forcible motion in August. And I feel like I talked too much, but that's what I'm bringing today.
I am very concerned that the library be a safe place and welcoming place for everybody and all marginalized or oppressed groups. And it concerns me that I think I would like people to perceive the library as a safe place without it having to demonstrate that by displaying, supporting displays, I guess, or for a host of groups. I mean, this was in Ashland in response to attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, but there have also been attacks in Ashland against people of color, mostly often connected with the theater there. And we're currently having we're not very far past having a bunch of protests on both sides of the war in Gaza between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So I would not like to see the library become sort of a bulletin board for items. I mean, we could have a Black Lives Matter flag. We could have, I mean, there's all kinds of symbols that we could display that show support for all kinds of different groups that face oppression in a variety of contexts. My preference would be not to display any of those, except perhaps during, I mean, we have historically done things for Black History Month. We've done things for Pride Month. I imagine there are other things that aren't coming immediately to mind, but it's, so I'm not in favor of reinstating the banner. There have been some discussions about whether or not we would display. I don't consider a flag to be necessarily artwork on its own, but we could display a piece of art that would be donated to the library that would be of significance to the LGBTQ plus community. And that would go through the general procedures for donating and displaying artwork. When we do displays like for Black History Month or Pride Month or whatever, I think there's an implication that those wouldn't be permanent, although that's not stated in our policy. So it may be that we need to make our policy a little more specific about that. So my personal inclination, and I very much support the LGBTQ community. I'm a member of it myself, you know, so it's this is a hard thing, and I'm sort of frustrated because of the way the timing on this has worked. The email that we got calling our attention to this and inquiring about it makes it appear as though we got a complaint from a community member about having the flag up. And so we're responding to that complaint by taking it down. And I would like to be clear that my willingness to remove the flag is not related to any complaint about it being up, but that I don't think it falls within the policy, and I was unaware. Whether I should have, perhaps that's my bad for not being aware, but it just, I don't think we can necessarily change people's perceptions. People are going to perceive what they want, I think. But I'm in favor of removing the banner. I'm not opposed to putting up some other sort of artwork. And I'm not removing the banner because somebody complained about it. I'm in favor of removing it because I don't think it fits our policy. But that's, I think, all I can say.
Gotcha, thank you.
And Kevin just.
Oh, okay. So to move the conversation, I have a few more remarks to make, but we'll go ahead and ask if Marissa, since you've been here through the whole first part of this conversation, if you have some comments or questions.
I want to say I stand with Carrie May. I know this was a difficult decision, but I think we have to be careful of course, making some sort of political statement, and unfortunately, that's what it's perceived as. And then our library is, of course, a welcoming place that I think that's stated, you know, as you enter. And of course, right, we all practice that. I assume if you visited the library, you have found us very welcoming and inclusive, and we will continue to be so. And obviously, if we're not, we'll hear complaints in the future.
Thank you. Kevin.
That went away.
No, I'm here. Hey, great apologies for missing the meeting. But yeah, I'm going to support Carrie May in this as well. And I've thought about it. I don't need to add anything at this time.
Thank you. And I'll kind of follow up on Susan's comments also, that I mean, I reviewed both of the policies carefully, and as Susan said, the display policy there's an implication that a display is topical and time limited because that is how displays typically are done in libraries and lots of other places. So even though there is not kind of clear language that displays are time limited, I believe it would be kind of a common acknowledgement that that is understood. And displaying the Pride banner for a prolonged period of time does not really meet the display policy. I think from the kind of more personal side of it, I think the fact that it has remained on display for a very long time makes this more difficult and maybe more symbolic in a negative way that and it being again linked to concern coming from several sources about the display. I mean, I would reiterate the interaction that I had with the patron at the time. There was nothing in that other than trying to kind of reaffirm, as Marissa said, that our libraries are warm, welcoming, inclusive places. They all have signs indicating that as you enter the library, and hopefully everybody is finding that to be their experience when they enter into a library and interact with staff, that we are not being exclusive and trying to make anybody feel unwelcome or uncomfortable there. It just makes the decision, I think, more profound at this time because of the length of time that the banner was displayed in Ashland, and it feels like a much more significant thing than removing a small display that had been there for a short period of time. So I personally support Carrie's decision, and relative to the comments or requests from staff group, I mean, I certainly support EDI training for the board. I don't think there can ever be too much training and awareness raising.
We had some last week,
We did have some last week, but there's certainly.
but there's plenty more we could have.
Right, a broader approach to that,
Yeah.
for sure. The board really does not have a role in interacting with any specific staff group directly about the director's decisions or other leadership staff decisions that affect employee groups. So we really don't have a role relative to that. And again, I don't know that this is necessarily the place. I think in terms of training for staff, I think that, again, that is a operational thing. I think the board certainly would support training. I mean, any training that staff feel is necessary and important for them to be able to do their job safely and effectively and appropriately. The board would certainly support that, as I assume Carrie would and all of the leadership staff would. And relative to a statement from the library director and or the board, I mean, it is certainly our intent that when this is brought to the actual board meeting for final discussion and vote, there will be a statement that would accompany that conversation at the board meeting. So it would not it will not simply be a motion and a decision. There will be some statement that accompanies that from the conversation that is happening here today. So. Yeah, that's kind of my feeling about it. Again, if there is any lack of clarity on kind of what's happened in the past and kind of where we go from here, happy to try and clarify that for anybody.
Thank you. One of the points in the letters from the my accent makes it difficult for me for some reason to say that entire phrase. I don't know why. But in the letter from the employee queer affinity group, the group also mentions that in the feedback for the facilities plan, there was a derogatory expletive referring to the banner that the employees were aware of, that the public also was able to see. The banner, per my impression from the letter, continues to indicate the welcoming nature of the library more than the printed signs or alternative signs would be. So I guess I just wanted to point out that in continuing to discuss a possible reinstatement of the flag, this is not board director Marty T against a particular decision that's been made. It is Marty T taking in all of the feedback that has come in since that decision was made. And I guess I'm asking, is there currently a plan for, or is there a request for proposals for ideas and concepts for public art to incorporate whatever welcoming message the banner had previously conveyed? Is that already in the works? It's been some weeks, and I know the possibility of an art installation has been mentioned in conversations.
Yes.
Where are we on that?
Yes, so that is the conversation going forward is, working with the, Ashland community to commission a piece of art and have that brought into the library. And so, we're in the discussion phases of that. The call for artwork has not gone out yet. We have received one example already, if you will.
Thank you. I tried to find the mention in the
Oh,
letter.
I found it.
Okay.
Seems to me when we have statements like that are posted on our bulletin board or whatever, that ought to get removed right away. I mean, I don't want statements of hate in the library either, so.
Mhm.
Was that statement I didn't get from the letter? Was this in the listening session on the facilities plan?
So we have a poster board that says, what would you change? What would you keep the same? What would you do differently? Something like that. And so it was an opportunity, and there's one in the lobby down here if you wanted to look at it.
Is that in all of the branches?
Yes, well, in several of them, he had put that up as a passive way for people who weren't able to attend the community listening sessions or to participate in the survey to have that opportunity for feedback. So I think in the Ashland Library, it sounds like it was on I'm looking at Joan to confirm for me, it was on the glass so that you could see it from the outside, and somebody had posted a sticky note on that.
On the tell us about your library display.
Yeah.
I've been to the library recently. For some reason, I cannot recall exactly where that display is.
Well, it doesn't really matter. It seems to me that if somebody put something like that on,
It was removed as soon as staff discovered it,
so,
yes.
I mean, that's what you do. I mean, you can't
Right.
prevent somebody from putting it up, but you can remove it as soon as you find it.
Right, and we have examples of people trying to put things on the bulletin board without going through our process for how things get put on the bulletin board and, you know, removing graffiti as soon as we can. You know, we do have, we don't, you know, following within our codes of conduct for what is in our displays is also, or how people react to our displays is also part of our policy and procedure.
Yeah, the letter from the queer affinity group also mentions that their position is that the removal of the flag after such a public review will complain, no matter how quickly it was moved, because the fact is that it did take place, will be quote, interpreted as a vindication of that stance by the library and will empower other patrons to follow us. End quote. So, I think that speaks to Susan's comment of timing. The timing is highly unfortunate. In that the queer affinity group is expressing, just I'm going to say a heightened sense of caution and a heightened sense of need for that welcoming message that the banner provides.
If we take the banner down at the end of Pride Month, there isn't going to be a good time to take this banner down. I get that. And I regret that that's the case. This hasn't been maybe handled the best way from the very beginning. So it's hard when and people will think what they think, I guess. I guess I'll just be quiet now because I'll just get myself in more trouble. But
I think that is why, you know, make a statement, put out a statement from the board or from the library director and the board together that reaffirms our commitment to inclusivity and being a welcome environment for everyone, including the LGBTQ plus, and particularly the LGBT plus is an important part of the next steps in addressing that type of concern, that it is a vindication of that stance as the stated in the letter.
yes, hopefully we can do things that cause people to trust the fact that this really was a policy decision, not a response to a complaint. It really wasn't a complaint that much. Wasn't a demand that we remove the banner. It really called it to our attention. And somebody pointed out, well, this is Pride Month, so we shouldn't do it now. Try to do it. Anyway.
So we've mentioned the reinstatement of the flag. We've talked about possibly a statement. Some of the other points, the third one was the creation and implementation of training document for staff, and that's on handling and responding to identity-based complaints, and that's a library executive function. That's a HR function. What about the mandatory ED&I training for board members? Are there training opportunities that are on anybody's radar that actually touch on possibly board members handling identity-based concerns? I don't want to call it a complaint. It's a concern.
I think actually tomorrow during the United for Libraries virtual conference, there is a session on, I'm not going to get the title of it right, but it is about, I just looked at it this morning, but there is a session that I think falls under this realm of, it's something to the effect of leading serving on a library board in polarized times or something to that effect. Not specific to the LGBTQ plus community, but specifically to representing multiple points of view in your community.
I'm signed up for that entire day, so
Yeah.
I'm going to add access to the training.
Yes, and if board members are not able to attend tomorrow, we can also make sure you have links to that if it proves to be what I think it might be. And I think, the question of whether there is specific training specifically for board members around this topic, we can certainly source that and look for something if that is something you all are interested in doing. And I'm looking to my virtual audience too for thumbs up or thumbs down or any indication there as well, because I recognize we have two of you out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of training opportunities that Val is always sending us. I plan on going to tomorrow, so.
Great.
Yeah, I'm planning on attending as much as I can tomorrow as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And it seems like the speaker that was at the retreat also, that's part of
He
his
indicated that there are some
repertoire.
other trainings that he had that are available through the Learning Well at the Clinica.
The art that is being considered for a display as a next step in the Ashland Library, do we have an idea of where it would be located?
We don't have a piece of art. We're just saying that we're open to the possibility of
Right, so we
doing
would-
this I mean, it's hard to respond to all of 5 or 6 of these by having it happen right this minute, but the idea is that they would like a replacement and we're certainly not opposed. So I think for the most part, for the purposes for which we convened today, I think we've mostly.
But I would like to answer Martha's question because she was asking,
But we don't have a particular piece of art.
No, so we don't have digital artwork, and so looking at the gift acceptance policy, the point number B under the art and other objects or collections, the library director, can, in coordination with the staff or the board as appropriate, would determine the placement and or display of any artwork in and around the library. So yes, not only are we saying, yes, we would like a piece of artwork commissioned, but we would also like to discuss the most appropriate location for it within the building. And I think that may also be dependent on what the piece of art is, where it would logically go.
And on 5, on the improved and prior communication with the queer affinity group, how do they currently communicate to the library management? Is just there's representation from the management leadership team on there, or because it sounds like it's an internal.
So this is actually something that was brought to light with this process, is that making sure that it's clear on both from the administrative side and from the members of the group of the affinity groups, and we have 5, Bryn, I think 4 or 5 affinity groups. That making sure it's clear what their purpose is and what that conduit for communication is something that has already come out of this discussion and these conversations.
Have the library received any other follow-up communication from the queer affinity group? Have we received anything else since then from the group?
The Queer Affinity Group did send an email to all staff with the letter to them, because several people have asked and some people were here for the board meeting, and so they did send out an email with that attached.
But no revision of the 5 points discussed. So that is the most recent communication we have.
Correct.
What would be the leadership team's, will there be a response or an acknowledgement or like a thank you, we received this letter, discussions are happening?
Well, today is the first step of that, right? I mean, this work session in part to address the concerns that were brought up at the July meeting, so that we are prepared for any further discussion and action at the August board meeting. Well, so, I'm sorry. So since this communication went out, I have met with the leadership from the Queer Affinity Group directly. And that from that conversation is where what I was saying about making sure we have more clear understanding of the bridge of communication between our affinity groups and the admin and leadership team is clear. That was one of the results after this communication at board meeting.
Gotcha. Thank you. I did not realize that.
Yes.
So, thank you. And Kevin unmuted himself. Oh, no,
Oh, not intentionally, I'm sorry. No, I'm just listening in and so far, nothing to say yet. Thanks.
Okay,
okay, thank you.
any additional questions, conversation? I guess in summarizing, what I see occurring between now and the board meeting is, probably in consultation with Carrie, that, creating a statement and some background information that will accompany the, action topic on the board meeting agenda will happen between now and then. And at the board meeting, there will be a motion that, whatever that might be, my sense, and I think I can kind of draw the conclusion from the comments, that the majority of board members have expressed support for Carrie's decision. So in terms of the reconsideration requests, that those opinions of board members will certainly be, I expect, be reflected in whatever motion comes before the board, but there will be more time for discussion there if need be. So I can't think. I mean, some of the other topics, I mean, scheduling, training, some of those things will certainly be going on in the background, and things that are more operational, that are really Carrie's domain, and that the leadership team at the library will take place in the appropriate places. So I think unless there is any further questions, anything further to say, the work session has met its purpose for today and adjourned.
May I make one request?
Sure,
Carrie
absolutely.
and the board members? If there is additional communications from the Queer Affinity Group, that pertain to the board and the actions they'd like to see us take, that would be shared with the board as it comes up in those conversations. Because that's the last communication that I've seen from them. And I'm really glad that a conversation has taken place since then. It's really good. I had no clue. I thought this was the last where we left it. And that's why I was rather thorough.
So I will say that in that conversation with the Queer Affinity Group, we did discuss, the library making a statement and having a statement that expresses our ongoing support for the LGBTQ plus in our communities. And my intention for any statement that I would be part of drafting would be involvement from them, and making sure that they're involved in that, because I think that first lesson learned from making sure that they are consulted in situations like this is in looking for their help in such statements.
I didn't know they existed until we got the email. So.
Kevin?
Yeah, Carrie, what other groups? I think you mentioned there are maybe 5 different affinity groups. Can you tell me what those are?
Not off the top, ma'am. We have one disabilities, one for compassion fatigue, one for neurodivergent, and for BIPOC.
Okay. Do these groups meet
And so-
during time, or is this on their own?
So it is it's a employee support group for peer support group, excuse me, for employees, and the meetings do happen on work time. And as I said, we will be working on formalizing the kind of purpose of those groups and making sure that that's clear, both to to the employees who participate and to leadership. And to you all.
All right, thanks.
Last call. Okay.
Where is that?
Oh, nothing else for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The meeting is adjourned.